Alright, all you glorious gamers out there, welcome to the PlayerStoo Podcast, the video game podcast for gamers like you, by gamers like you. You can find PlayerStoo on all the social media, that's Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, the lot. You can also find our written content over at PlayerStoo.com, that's PLAYERSTOO.com. And if you could take 5 seconds to give us 5 stars over on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, it really helps us out. It does a huge amount for the exposure of the show. And while you're over there as well, if you could leave us a review, again, it just helps us out even more. And if you're someone that's already done that for us, thank you so much. It means a huge amount and you're an absolute legend to us. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, on with the show. My name is Mark Henderson. With me, as always, Mr. Lewis Camley. How's it going, Lewis?
It's going well, Mark. Good to be talking to you again. I was going to say that I was furiously angry today when I first came and sat in the lockdown cupboard, but I've chilled out, I'm not as angry, and I'm ready to talk about video games, which aren't evil, and you'll find out why I'm saying all this in just a few moments.
Okay, Liz, why don't you enlighten us and tell us why you're saying all that?
Well, Mark, this week I have only been playing Hollow Knight, as I said last week that I would be doing, and effectively I am at the end of the game. I've done everything in the game that needs to be done, and it is astonishing. There is no two ways about it. Particularly if you have PS Plus right now and it is available for free, you owe it to yourself to at least try this game because, my God, it is such an experience. So from where I was last week, which was probably just over halfway, 3/4 of the way through the game, I've put maybe another 15-20 hours in this week alone. I've been absolutely gunning it. And that section of the game and the way that it sort of propulsively builds towards the end, not in a narrative sense at all, really, because the narrative is still so sparsely given to you. You're piecing the story together yourself, really. As you've said countless times, it's all show, don't tell. But it really doesn't even show you all that much a lot of the time. You have to kind of work for a lot of that.
No, it doesn't. It's even more show, don't tell than Bloodborne even was. Like, at least that gave you a lot of item descriptions and things like that.
And even some of the tablets that you find that contain some of the lore, they're written in really opaque poetry, and so it's still not very clear what's actually being suggested about what's going on. But the way that the gameplay builds is the thing that really stunned me. Like, the worlds continue to just be gorgeous. The way that your different abilities start to stack up and improve, and how you are kind of lured into using them because of the structure of different boss fights or the layouts of different areas. Like, it really challenges you to put all of the things that you're picking up along the way to use. And I have to say, Mark, it's one of the best games I've ever played in terms of actually making use of the variety of buffs and upgrades and different abilities that the game gives you, because I complain endlessly about games like this, or RPGs or action-adventure games now, as they all have RPG elements, where they give you a skill tree and 90% of that you don't use. This game, Hollow Knight, it makes all of those meaningful, and it makes you change them, and it makes you think about what each skill offers you and what sacrifices you have to make, and no more so than in the end stages where suddenly platforming becomes a really major part of it in a way that it kind of isn't until the latter stages of the game. There's a whole section which is all platforming and no enemies. It feels a lot like Celeste. None of the rest of the game is like that, and you just have to rethink your whole strategy.
Yeah, so things like that are very Bloodborne as well, where the Miyazaki game balance is just so good in Hollow Knight. You know what I mean? Is the game balance is incredible. Like, all the charms, as you said, have their place should you want to use them. Very few of them feel as if they're totally useless. Do you know what I mean? And it does genuinely feel as if you can play the game exactly how you want to play the game, and that is completely valid. You know?
Absolutely, yeah. And it makes you think about what your play style is. I don't think a lot of games outside of maybe like fighting games and things like that really provoke you to think, like, what am I as a player here? What am I about? What am I good at? What am I not so good at? Where do I need to compensate? But that all comes to a head, Mark, in the fucking awful final battle, which I have now sunk.
The final battle is amazing, Liz. I will not have a bad word to it against it. It's one of the best boss fights I've ever played in my life.
I don't think it is among the very best boss fights in this game, I would say. There is an element of that. Brilliant. Obviously, I'm partly saying that because of the difficulty. It is so insanely difficult. The boss fight comes in 2 phases, and the first phase is really straightforward and would have been, had it been slightly harder, a really nice way to end the game, because I really think final boss fights should lead you through the end of the game, be difficult, absolutely, but give you payoff for all of the things that you've learned, all of the skills that you've put together, and allow you to successfully come to the end of the game. But the second, the true final boss is so maddeningly hard. It adds so much on top of what other bosses have been able to do. I think it's a bit unbalanced, and I'm sure when I do beat it, which I have now tried to do for at least 7 hours of gameplay, when I'm through with that, I'm sure I'll feel a bit differently. But right now, it is spoiling my enjoyment of those final hours.
I find that genuinely really upsetting. Like, I genuinely do, because I just know when I finished that fight, which I also struggled with massively, and it took me a very, very long time to beat the Radiance, who is the final boss fight. My sense of quite genuinely pride was incredible. I was so unbelievably proud to have beaten the Radiance, because even now, that is still one of the things that I point to of, that is the most difficult thing I have ever done in a video game, and I fucking did it. It's just something that I can always point to and say, that is a real thing that I did that I am genuinely really proud of. Me getting through Hollow Knight and completing it to over 100%, including all the DLC, like, is genuinely one of the proudest moments in any video game that I have ever played. So I really, really, really hope that you can get over like, what it is that you're feeling just now, just knowing that payoff is so fucking good. Do you know what I mean? Precisely because of how hard it makes you work to beat that final boss, you know?
I just feel like I've done the work already, and I just want to get the cutscene now. But the thing really for me is that it's all about time, and it's all about the fact that, you know, I want to move on now. I feel like I've given it my all, and I have a whole kind of litany of other games to play. I will beat it, and I'll feel great when it's there, and it does not devalue the rest of the game, but I am so fucking frustrated right now.
It's kicking your ass, Liz. It's kicking your ass. It does it to everyone who plays it for the first time, I'm sure.
Anyway, what have you been playing, Mark?
Well, Lewis, I have now rolled credits on Watch Dogs Legion.
Very good.
I'm not going to harp on about this too much, but all my previous criticism of the game is only amplified, to be completely honest with you, as the game continues. I basically gave up with recruitment missions entirely at one point because it became obvious that they were largely unnecessary and were becoming very, very repetitive indeed. And also, I just wanted to progress the story faster as well, to be honest. I feel that it gives you a whole load of these recruitment missions to do, and it sort of slows the pace of the story like quite a lot. And actually I found I was enjoying it more when I was sort of just ignoring the recruitment stuff and going full throttle on the story missions, which I did enjoy quite a lot more and weren't anywhere near as repetitive as the recruitment missions were. But really, there was still nowhere near enough variety in the gameplay between different characters and whatever, and that was such a huge part of the game. Do you know what I mean? That was the crux of what it was. They were supposed to be able to recruit everyone was supposed to have different attributes, and what it doesn't tell you in the trailer is that, oh, that guy who can like summon a drone and like float in and just easily hack some data and then fly away again. What it doesn't tell you in the trailer is that everyone can do that because you can spawn a drone from a spawn point like 10 meters away. Do you know what I mean? There's just not enough variety. It never feels as though playing with a different character like really changes the gameplay in any way, or like certainly I never found that. I found a way that I wanted to play the game, which was basically use hacking to survey the area, go in relatively stealthily, but have a half decent gun if I needed it. And that was what I wanted from every single character, you know what I mean? And I could get that from every single character as well. It wasn't as if I had to pick and choose, you know? So, I mean, a lot of that was pretty disappointing, and honestly the story ended with quite a whimper, I've got to say. I should preface this like there are going to be some incredibly mild spoilers here as I talk about the story. If you don't want to know anything at all, just fast forward a little bit. I'm sure I'll be finished talking about this pretty quickly. Honestly, the twist at the end, I guessed about 4 hours into the game, and it came true about 30 hours into the game, and I was like, oh, okay, so that wasn't a twist at all. And then the main sort of bad guy gets killed in a cutscene, which is so incredibly unsatisfying. You don't get to do battle with them at all. They die in a cutscene. It is ridiculous. And even one of the other main bad guys before that, the battle with them is just so unsatisfying. Like when you actually kill them, it really was, man. Like it was so unsatisfying killing these characters that were built up throughout the whole game, you know? And there was a big emotional decision supposed to be getting made at the end, which didn't pay off in the first place because it didn't really feel as if it had as much emotional weight as the game was trying to tell you that it did, if that makes sense. Then after the credits, that was immediately undercut. Any emotional weight that moment was given was immediately undercut the minute the credits finished. It was just so disappointing, do you know what I mean? Overall, I would not rush to buy this game at all. It is somewhat entertaining, and it's not a bad game. Like, I'm not saying that it is a bad game, but it's just not that interesting. Like, it's really not. It's just completely fine. I will, in 3 months, have basically forgotten most of what happened in the game, I am sure. It sounds like Assassin's Creed Valhalla is a much better Ubisoft game. If you're into your Ubisoft games, I would gravitate towards that. And frankly, on the run up to Christmas, there is going to be a hell of a lot more interesting things to play. However, Lewis, I think that the most interesting thing about finishing Watch Dogs was the fact that I completed it on my shiny new PS5.
Whoa.
Hooray! I got a PS5. Now, me and Lewis both managed to pre-order PS5s. I managed to get one on Amazon that delivered the next day, somewhat unbelievably. I am aware that I might be the luckiest human in the world because the battle to get a PlayStation 5 has been long and unsuccessful for many, many people. But yeah, I ended up with a PlayStation 5 list. After all my trying and failing, I now have a PlayStation 5. The first thing that I have to say about the PlayStation 5 is it is massive, and I know that that's been going around the internet for a while, but see however big that you think that it is so much bigger. Lewis, it is massive. Even the girth, for lack of a better term, is so big. Like, it stands taller than the PlayStation 4 lying down by quite a noticeable distance. It is probably thicker than the PlayStation 3 was, and that was a big chunky boy. It is absolutely colossal. I cannot overstate this enough. It is huge. Also, I was saying to you just off air as well, a lot was made about the fact that, oh yeah, it's going to be way quieter than the PS4, and the PS4 was a noisy motherfucker, like it really, really was. However, I wouldn't exactly be describing the PlayStation 5 as quiet. I would say that the fan noise is definitely better than the PlayStation 4, like categorically. But again, the PlayStation 4 was noisy to begin with, you know, like my PlayStation 4 sounded as if there was a small rocket about to take off in my living room. It was incredibly noisy, so this isn't exactly a high bar to clear. But the disc spinning as well, like, it's definitely quieter than the PlayStation 4, but I would be struggling to describe it as quiet, you know? Anyway, Lewis, on to the things that you actually play on the PlayStation 5. And the first thing that I actually played was Astro's Playroom. But before we get into that, I do want to just say that playing Watch Dogs Legion, which was a PlayStation 4 game, the load times were noticeably faster. They were very, very fast, in fact. And it was good to see that just right away, like, oh, this is a clearly superior piece of hardware. But Astro's Playroom, Lewis, it's loaded onto every PlayStation 5 in the world, and good lord, it is the most amazing tech demo I've ever seen in my life. It is incredible. It is such a beautiful fucking tribute to PlayStation's history. It is a wonderful nostalgia trip. I'm fully willing to admit that this is 100% fan service, but I am here for every fucking minute of it, to the point that I actually platinumed it just because I wanted to keep playing and just wanted to keep finding all the little references and do everything that the game had to offer, including doing the optional speedruns and things like that. I just done that just because they're not very difficult speedruns, I'm not going to lie to you. Lewis, it was an absolute joy to play. I cannot overstate this enough. It was amazing. It's the best tech demo in the world.
I really like that approach of doing the, like you say, the tech demo that basically is there to show off what the DualSense in particular can do, but doing that through this kind of love letter to PlayStation's history, I think was such a smart move
Lewis,
from Sony.
You're going to love it, man. Like, I actually cannot wait for you to get a PlayStation 5. You're going to love it, man. Seriously, you will. And anyone who loves PlayStation will love it, or anyone that has any nostalgic connection to PlayStation is going to love it. It's just incredible. Like, it really is fantastic. But Lewis, as you correctly said, it's a tech demo basically to show off the DualSense controller, and good lordy, show it off they did. It is a remarkably cool piece of hardware, I've got to say. The combination of the speaker and the controller, which no longer just sounds like a small animal trapped in your controller, it actually sounds quite good, and the haptic feedback on the triggers. Oh man, I don't really know how to describe it, but it just feels alive in a way that is unfamiliar, I suppose. Like, it's not anything that I'd ever experienced before, but everything just felt much more alive than it otherwise did. So I actually played Astro and platinumed Astro before going back and finishing Watch Dogs Legion. And Watch Dogs Legion was obviously a PlayStation 4 version, which didn't properly support the DualSense. So I never had any of the haptic feedback, or it wasn't making use of the microphone or anything like that. And going from Astro back to Watch Dogs Legion, it felt as if there was something missing. Like, it felt as if what's happened here, there's something missing from this game. So this thing that was initially unfamiliar and new immediately fell into feeling very familiar very quickly. You know, it felt natural, which I think is real credit to PlayStation, because the way that it was implicated in Astro's Playroom is super. Like, I cannot say enough good things about it. It was incredible and really enhanced the gameplay more than I was expecting it to, you know. So really, I hope that devs, particularly third-party devs, because I know PlayStation will be taking full advantage of the DualSense, but I really hope third parties take advantage of the DualSense as well, because it is a really excellent piece of hardware, like really good, really good.
Apart from the kind of new additions, like the triggers and the haptics, I mean, does it just feel good as a controller anyway? The buttons feel okay?
It's a nice controller, yeah. I would say that it's definitely a step up from the DualShock 4, which I liked fine. Yeah. But honestly, I still think Xbox remain king of the castle in the controller world in terms of shape and in terms of feel and in terms of ergonomics. However, what PlayStation are actually doing with this controller in terms of the haptic feedback and things like that, I mean, it is massively a cut above everything.
Nice one.
And just two other little points as well. The interface, which was shown off really not that long ago, actually, it took me a wee bit more getting used to than I thought it was going to be completely honest with you, but I'm sure that will come in time. And also in Astro, I tried the in-game help that was shown off in the UI demo, and it was for something that I genuinely couldn't find. So I went in and found where I was supposed to be going. I had a little video up. I had it pinned to the side of my screen while I was going around and following it and finding it's like a missing jigsaw piece that you basically have to find, and it just followed it straight to it, and it was just great. And I just thought, do you know what, for kids or even for just mad trophy hunters, like this is going to be absolutely great. And again, it's just another thing that I really hope devs take advantage of, you know?
Yeah, I'm not confident that they will long term, but I really hope that Sony are pushing it as a really valuable thing for devs to be kind of looking at, because it's just one of these added value things for the new console, and you don't want that to fall away too quickly. So I'm glad that you even gave it a try. It's nice to know that it's there and people are jumping into it already. Yeah,
definitely, man. And honestly, my experience with the PlayStation 5 has been almost entirely positive so far, I've got to say. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm probably biased as all hell on it, but it's difficult to pick a fault at this point in time, I've got to say. Now all I need to do, Lewis, is buy a real PlayStation 5 game and see what it can actually fucking do.
Bear in mind you can get Bugsnax for free on PS Plus just now as well, so that's
not the same. I want Demon Souls, man. I want something to push the boundaries. I want to see glorious ray tracing. I don't want to see weird bugs.
Well, speaking of weird bugs and PS5, I am waiting for my console. I do have an email saying it's been shipped.
Oh, yeah. Exciting.
I don't totally believe it, because it also said it was not going to come until the 10th of December, but I'm starting to think that maybe that meant by the 10th of December, but I also don't have any tracking information, so I'm only a little alarmed, quite a bit excited, and my console is coming with Spider-Man Miles Morales, so I will get straight into some sweet bug action.
Nice one, man. Well, on that note, it is time for the news. Alright, a news item number 1. IO Interactive have announced that they are developing a brand new James Bond game, Lewis. Currently titled Project 007, the game's website states that it would be featuring a wholly original Bond story, and that players would step into the shoes of the world's favourite secret agent to earn their 00 status in the very first James Bond origin story, which is very interesting indeed. IO Interactive CEO Hakan Abram said this regarding the announcement.
It's true that once in a while the stars do align in our industry. Creating an original Bond game is a monumental undertaking, and I truly believe that IO Interactive, working closely with our creative partners at Eon and MGM, can deliver something extremely special for our players and communities. Our passionate team is excited to unleash their creativity into the iconic James Bond universe and craft the most ambitious game in the history of our studio.
Interestingly, this game will be self-published by IO, and it will not involve Warner Brothers. As the statement that Lewis just read said, the Bond IP is actually owned by MGM. And I think that there was a little confusion around that, because this means that IO are also working on a separate title with WB. So since getting their independence from Square Enix in 2017, IO have released two absolutely stellar Hitman games, with a third one coming in January. They now are self-publishing a 007 game, and they've got another game in the works with Warner Brothers. I mean, what a success story, man. This studio has worked wonders since they left Square Enix. I'm genuinely so happy for them. Those Hitman games were supposed to be absolutely brilliant, and I'm so glad that they have got the clout that they needed to get an IP from Warner Brothers and to get fucking James Bond, man. Jesus.
Yeah, it is massive. I totally agree with what you just said there. When I first heard this news, I thought this is such a feel-good story, because this is, like you say, it's a studio who have just proven that they can do games of this calibre. With these last two Hitman games, which have been incredible, really well received. They were ambitious with the different models they tried for putting those games out. The fact that they've bundled all of the previous games' content into the second one, it's all coming to the third one. They've got the VR title coming as well. I mean, they're just firing on all cylinders, and to take an enormous, a global IP like Bond and be able to do something original with it, like not just a movie tie-in or anything like that.
No, an original origin story as well, which is really interesting.
Totally. I mean, it could go in any direction. If you've played those Hitman games, the most recent ones, or if you've watched any of it or whatever, you just know categorically that they can deliver on this project. Because, I mean, you could just reskin those Hitman games and they would feel close to a Bond game.
Yeah, definitely, man, yeah.
But with a lot of focus on story and with all the interest and the money that IP will bring in, I think it's going to be great. It's such a good match for that studio in that game.
Oh, totally, man. Absolutely perfect match. And also, like, Bond has just been absent from video games for such a long time, do you know what I mean? Since GoldenEye, which was obviously the crowning jewel for Bond in video games, nothing has really lived up to that, really, in any capacity, and a lot of them have been actively shit, to be honest. So it's nice to know that a trusted developer is going in there and can hopefully do something really interesting with the series, which has been absent, as I said, from video games for quite a long time now, you know?
Absolutely, yeah. And it's just great as well to see this continued belief in the idea that big franchises and licensed games don't have to follow the license. You know, we've got this Harry Potter game coming out. The Batman games obviously did it to huge success. It's happening a lot these days that people can move the fan bases of these franchises into gaming without necessarily telling the same stories, which is fucking great for the medium.
Absolutely. I could not agree more with that. And the fact that this will hopefully not be tied in with the movies in the slightest, it will be its own thing. It will be a gaming Bond universe. Yeah. I mean, that's super exciting, man. I think that could be great. I really, really do. Alright, news item number 2. PlayStation's CEO and President Jim Ryan has been given interviews all over the goddamn place this week, Lewis. Most notably in GQ, The Telegraph, and with a Russian news agency called TASS, or TASS. Not really sure how we're supposed to be pronouncing that. However, he has been making statements left, right and centre. My God, he's never been out the news. His statements have included defending the $70 price tag on PlayStation games, telling us that every PlayStation 5 in the world has apparently been sold. Apparently, he, quotes, isn't hearing criticism about the amount of PS5 storage. I don't know how he can not be hearing that. He clearly isn't listening. And he also refused to confirm that God of War Ragnarok was a PS5 exclusive, much to the sadness of Mark. Very, very sad indeed. However, Lewis, I don't want to talk about any of that, and we could talk about all of that, quite frankly, but we do not have the time. What I want to talk about is how he spoke about PS Now, PS Plus, the PS Plus collection, and Games Pass. So when this Russian news outlet TASS asked him, how will you respond to Microsoft's Games Pass? Ryan replied with this.
There is actually news to come, but just not today. We have PlayStation Now, which is a subscription service, and that is available in a number of markets.
Then, when asked by GQ in a separate interview, does that mean services such as PlayStation Now are going to be more important in the next few years? Ryan replied with this.
PlayStation Now and Plus are very important to us today. This year, we're just trying to keep it focused on the PlayStation 5 and the games, but that doesn't mean we're not thinking deeply about our services and figuring out some quite interesting stuff that'll get its own moment in the limelight.
GQ then followed up that question with, is PlayStation Plus collection a one and done thing, or should people expect that to be expanded upon as the PlayStation 5 continues its lifespan? To which Ryan replied this.
Well, we're going to wait and see how the world receives the Plus collection. You know, which games are played, how much they're played, before we make any decisions about that. We think it's potentially going to be a great user acquisition tool. Arguably, if you never had a PS4 and you choose to buy a PS5, you basically get a PS4, right?
So basically what I'm trying to do with all these quotes is to give a picture that it seems that PlayStation are hinting at a move to more directly take on Games Pass, or at least that's what I'm taking from it. Is that what you're taking from it as well?
Sort of, yeah.
And this is also something that we just talked about in our topic of the week last week, was that we were both expecting that PlayStation would have had a more direct competitor to Games Pass of their own by now. So I suppose, just what do you make of this, like, overall?
I think it's good that, first of all, that they are acknowledging that competition with Game Pass is sort of necessary. Like, the fact that they're saying there is news to come, that has to lead to something, right? You can't just pretend that you haven't made this comment now, right? So something must be brewing. I basically don't think that PlayStation is capable of offering what Game Pass offers just because of the finances that it seems.
No, I don't think
involved.
that we're going to get a like for like. Like, if anyone's expecting that, stop expecting that.
I think a lot of people will be expecting that, and it should be said that that's very unlikely to happen.
I would completely agree with that. I think if we get something that's 75% of what Games Pass is, like, I really think that is a huge win for PlayStation only gamers, you know, because I simply don't think that Sony do have the ability to match what Xbox is doing, as you said, purely from a financial point of view.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge undertaking to offer something like that. PlayStation have said that it doesn't make financial sense for them, basically, to give their first-party games away for free, quote-unquote, for free, in a subscription model. So we can't really expect anything quite the same. But the fact that something could be in the offing, something between PlayStation Now and PS Plus, I think could work quite nicely. The way that they are offering games for longer spans, like Bugsnax just now, or Destruction All-Stars when it comes out, is going to be available for free for a few months. I would quite like to see some games come to whatever service in that kind of way, like new releases available for free or for very cheap on a short-term basis even. Like, that would get us closer to what Game Pass is doing. Yeah,
definitely. I think that so much value is generated in Games Pass by the fact that first-party games and even now third-party games are going to be there day one. You know what I mean? That just adds so much value to the service, so much value. And really, I think that is what PlayStation are missing massively on PlayStation Now. So I do hope that they go through a bit of a rebranding of all of this as well, because PlayStation Now doesn't have the greatest of reputations, you know. But what do you think of the PlayStation Plus collection and the fact that they were a bit wishy-washy, I will say, about adding further games to that, you know?
Yeah, I think that's sort of just PR speak in a certain sense, because I don't think they'll add to it massively, right? And I think that there's embedded in those statements is the sense that the PS Plus collection is already trying to offer the best of PS4, so you can't just add to that infinitely. But I would be stunned if over the years more of their major first-party games don't become available. But they're not going to say that just now because they still want people to buy The Last of Us and Ghost of Tsushima. So I think that games like that will eventually come to the PS Plus collection, but I still think it's going to be a long time before we see native PS5 games be offered through the PS Plus subscription, unless these kinds of changes that we're discussing start to happen.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be very interesting to see how this pans out, but it's exciting, man. It's exciting. I'm glad they're doing something.
Well, yeah, it's been so long that we've been waiting for something like this, so the fact that they are acknowledging it openly is a good sign.
Alright, and news item number 3. Fortnite have introduced a new subscription model which will begin on December the 2nd. The subscription, which is completely optional, it should be pointed out, is called Fortnite Crew. It will cost $9.99 here in the UK and $11.99 in the US, and it will launch alongside the Chapter 2 Season 5 Season Pass. Your monthly subscription will include the Battle Pass, access to exclusive cosmetic packs, and 1,000 V-Bucks. Epic has also confirmed that the cosmetics in the subscription service will never be sold or made available outside of the subscription service, basically meaning that you're not going to be paying for a subscription service to find these exclusive items available 2 months down the line to everyone, you know. Yeah. The Eurogamer article, which I am referencing, links as always over in the show notes at PlayersToo.com, is quick to point out that this is more expensive than a Netflix or a Disney Plus subscription. However, it is the same price as a World of Warcraft subscription, so this price point isn't without precedent, you know? I think that the value here really lies in how much you value those exclusive skins, because, and as this Eurogamer article also points out, 1,000 V-Bucks, even with my short time with Fortnite, I know that 1,000 V-Bucks doesn't get you very far, you know? So I really think that the value is in those cosmetic skins, and I think that those are only worth whatever the player is willing to pay for them, you know? So if you're someone who's not into cosmetics and is not into skins, this probably isn't for you, in all honesty. But if you're someone who actually does spend a bit of money on skins and getting the latest thing on Fortnite, then maybe this might be something to look into, you know?
Yeah, that's it. It's interesting that Epic are experimenting with new, and in fact, as you were kind of saying off air before we started, it's kind of an old model, really. This is an old idea, this way
exactly.
Of doing
so
things.
Going back to World of Warcraft, that is the game that I associate with a subscription service, you know?
Yeah.
And that is way old now, and it sort of felt as though the free-to-play microtransaction battle pass model, which so many games are using now, superseded that in a way, whereas this is a look back anyway from Fortnite, it seems.
Yeah, I wonder if it's just about trying to cut down on the people who buy one battle pass because they like the content that season or whatever, but then they don't pick up the next one. Whereas if you're a regular Fortnite player, if you can get locked into a repeating monthly thing, then you're probably unlikely to cancel it at any point. But yeah, as you were saying, like the economics of it, they're kind of straightforward in a sense. Like if you work out roughly how much you spend each month on Fortnite and then say, is it worth me paying potentially more than that to get some extra cosmetics that no one else can get? That's the decision to be made if you're a Fortnite player, basically.
Yeah, it's basically, do you want those very desirable cosmetics? Because it sounds as if those will be coming through the subscription service now. And if you are someone who is into that, then maybe look into the subscription service. But if you aren't, like, do not worry about it, is my advice. You can just continue to buy your battle pass every 3 or 4 months or whenever it is and just play the game as you always have been, you know. The thing is that this is totally optional, so you can just continue as you were, you know. I mean, it shouldn't change anyone's ability to play the game how they want, you know. But I am genuinely interested to see how this pans out, because if Fortnite can make it a success, there is a good chance this is going to appear elsewhere in other games. So it'll be very, very interesting to see how this pans out. Alright, finishing off as we always do with a couple of shout outs. Shout out number 1, Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity has come out this week. This is the Dynasty Warriors style Zelda game set in the Breath of the Wild universe. It's currently sitting at a pretty respectable 79 on Metacritic. The main critiques of the game seem to be that the combat is quite repetitive, which in the Dynasty Warriors games it is. And there does seem to be some performance issues on the Switch, which is unfortunate, to be fair. But overall, the game seems fun. If you like the first Hyrule Warriors, or if you are particularly into the Dynasty Warriors series, this might be something to look into. I know that you played the demo, Lewis, a few weeks back. Are you in any way interested in giving the full game a go?
I am to an extent, yeah. I mean, I'm not going to buy it and play it right now by any stretch, but I got enough enjoyment out of that demo, and particularly the return to the Breath of the Wild Hyrule, that I would be up for giving it a shot. But the critiques that you mentioned there are very apparent in the demo, and that only lasts a little bit of time. So if the whole game is like that, that's a substantial set of issues. Yeah,
definitely, man, definitely. Alright, shout out number 2. Football Manager 2021 has also come out this week, currently sitting at a very respectable indeed 85 on PC. The game is also coming to Xbox One and Series X, but is not coming to PlayStation. This was part of the rumour that Microsoft might be interested in buying Sega, which of course would be a monumental move within video games akin to them purchasing Bethesda. But to the game itself, it doesn't seem to be a revolution in any capacity in terms of its changes. It just seems to be tweaks to a well-worked and well-liked formula, quite frankly. And by all accounts, the game is pretty damn good. If you want a football manager sim, this is and always has been the one to get, quite frankly. Lewis, you were fully addicted to Football Manager back in the day. Do you feel like this game could move away from an annualised model? To me, it even seems it's better suited to moving away from the annualised model than something like FIFA or Madden, because it is just management, effectively. Do you know what I mean? It feels as if this could be updated pretty regularly and easily and have a subscription or something like that, you know?
I really think that, yeah. I think that you're right in saying that is more suitable here than even in FIFA, because at least in FIFA and other sports games like that, there could be big mechanical changes that the devs want to make, but that never really happens with a game like Football Manager. There's always
I mean, I'm sure that there's back-end tweaks, those meta-game tweaks,
sure.
But there's no reason that can't be done live, you know what I mean, as a service game. You know?
Exactly. There's often new features added and things like that, but it doesn't feel, at least, that it would have to be annualised like that. And even they recently gave away FM 2020 for free on the Epic Store, and that was like obviously just a month or two before the new game comes out. But there's really no issue with jumping in there and just starting your time with it, because the game changes very little, and the players all move naturally within the game anyway, so it's not even like you just need new team lineups and that kind of thing. So yeah, I mean, I think that's a great idea for that franchise, yeah.
Alright, shout out number 3. Stadia is coming to iOS, and I know that a lot of you are thinking, so what? Who cares about Stadia now? But quite frankly, it's just another massive company that is taking game streaming to iOS. You know what I mean? It's just continuing to put more pressure onto Apple that we are bringing these services to your devices, whether you want it or not. Obviously, this follows in the footsteps of Microsoft and Amazon, who will be bringing xCloud and Luna, respectively, to iOS via web apps. Google are going to be doing a similar thing with Stadia, and all that does is effectively dodge Apple's App Store altogether. So I really don't know why Apple wouldn't just let them on their App Store where they could make money from them rather than just letting them dodge it entirely. It seems madness to me, but this is a good thing, yes?
Yeah, it absolutely is. Yeah, it'd be really interesting to see how they all work and what Apple's next move is going to be. But yeah, this is a step in the right direction.
Alright, and shout out number 4. Annapurna has delayed 12 minutes, The Artful Escape and Last Stop until 2021. All 3 games had a 2020 release window. 12 minutes specifically was one of the indie games that me and you, Lewis, I know were most looking forward to this year probably. Although Annapurna haven't said anything to this effect, I would be very surprised if this wasn't due to COVID in some capacity. Smaller studios almost certainly are less able to bear the brunt of that sort of disruption to their process, you know? So it's almost certainly rooted there in some capacity, you know? But I think that we would both say that we would rather the devs took their time, got it right, and everyone was safe, rather than they rush something out the door, you know?
100%, yeah. And there's just no need to cram those games in before the end of the year now. There's so much happening. Give them space to breathe.
Absolutely, man, absolutely. All right, and final shout out number 5, and this is a Black Friday PSA, I will say. Black Friday will be the day after this podcast goes out. All I want to say about it is it's a massive scam. Just be fully aware of that. If you are buying something, just make sure that you're actually getting a good deal. Specifically on Amazon, like, use price trackers to see the price history of the items that you're buying. Make sure that the deal that they are saying is great is actually great. I use a Chrome extension called Keepa, which is Keepa, which just shows you the price history on Amazon products on the page, which I find very useful. Because I was looking in their early Black Friday sale at 2 sets of earbuds, basically, and both of them had been at a lower price in like the last 4 months or something like that.
Yeah.
So just be very, very careful. Do not feel pressured into buying something that you don't want to buy. If you don't want to get a Chrome extension, there are websites that do basically the same thing. Camel is probably the most famous one that does it for Amazon. Yeah, just don't get sucked in. Like, I hate sales like this so much. It's just consumerism at its absolute fucking worst, you know? Just don't get drawn in. If you don't need something, don't buy it. And certainly don't be pressured into buying something, because the price that it's at, it will probably be at again, almost certainly.
Exactly, yeah.
All right, and on that dreary note, time for a beer, and we'll be back with Topic of the Week. And we are back for Topic of the Week. Topic of the Week this week is our Game Awards predictions list. This week, the Game Award nominations are out, and as we done last year, we are going to predict who we think is going to win the Game Awards. We are going to have a little bet with one another to see who can get most predictions right, and the winner of that bet will set the loser of that bet a gaming challenge to be completed within the next calendar year. Or before the Game Awards 2021. Is that how we were doing it?
Yeah, that's what we did last year. And so, well, if you don't know, I lost last year. I feel like it was close, can't quite remember. But
no, it wasn't. We also done this with the DICE Awards. I smoked you at the Game of the Year Awards, and then you won the DICE Awards.
Okay. But yeah, I lost last year, and Mark challenged me to play Hollow Knight, which is why
exactly. So it's currently ongoing. Yeah.
So all of this misery and anger is your fault.
Well, the reason that I played all the Uncharted games earlier in the year is because of Lewis, and that was the one that I lost. So there we go. So we're going to do that again this year. But let's get stuck into it, because there is a hell of a lot of categories here. So, Game of the Year, Lewis.
Yeah, so this is recognising a game that delivers the absolute best experience across all creative and technical fields. It is the daddy, obviously.
It absolutely is, Lewis. So the nominees for this are Animal Crossing New Horizons, Doom Eternal, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Ghost of Tsushima, Hades, and The Last of Us Part 2. What are your thoughts, Lewis?
I think this is a remarkable collection of games, to be honest.
It's surprisingly tight, isn't it?
It's tight, it's varied. I've got to say, one, I quickly went through what my thoughts were before we started this, and I hadn't come down definitively on an answer here. And I do want to just say, I think it's great that Animal Crossing got nominated.
I totally understand why it got nominated, and I think it deserves that nomination. I do think it's probably the weakest game in this category.
I disagree. I think Doom Eternal doesn't deserve a spot in this category, to be honest, but maybe we'll touch on that a little bit.
Not sure about that. Okay.
But, so there's a few games here that I think the best contenders probably are Final Fantasy, Hades, and The Last of Us Part 2. And I'm going to come down, and I might change my mind as this goes on, but I'm going to come down on The Last of Us Part 2 because I think that is the best game made this year for a whole host of reasons, which if you want to hear them, go back and listen to our episodes where we talked at length about The Last of Us Part 2. But I am concerned that the politics and the reaction to the game may affect its chances of winning here.
I totally agree, Lewis. I totally agree. I think that the best game there, actually probably a cut above. I've not played Hades yet, and I know that that's supposed to be great, so we'll maybe remove that. But Ghost of Tsushima, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Doom Eternal, I loved all those games. Like, I really genuinely did. They were all fantastic. And really, The Last of Us Part 2 is a total cut above, as far as I'm concerned. Like, a total cut above. And I think that because Hades is the new hotness and recency bias is a very real thing.
Absolutely.
And because of a lot of the toxicity around The Last of Us Part 2, which it just felt as if like people were falling over themselves to get the boot in for no reason at all for a game that was actually fucking brilliant. I wonder if that has hurt it. But I would also go for The Last of Us Part 2 in this category because I genuinely believe that is the game of the year. I think that is the best game that's come out this year and is definitely my favourite of these nominations. Alright, Lewis, after that, Best Game Direction.
So this is awarded for outstanding creative vision and innovation in game direction and design.
The nominations for this one are Final Fantasy VII Remake, Ghost of Tsushima, Hades, Half-Life Alyx, and The Last of Us Part 2. Okay, it's my turn to pick first this time, and again, I basically have to pick The Last of Us Part 2, I think. Again, because I did think it was the best game direction. I haven't played Hades, which is unfortunate because it's going to come up a lot here. But I know that the game direction of Supergiant games is just fantastic as well. I don't think that it's going to be quite as complex as The Last of Us Part 2. Same with Ghost of Tsushima, that would probably be my second choice here in reality. But yeah, Last of Us Part 2 for me.
Very nice. I think I actually am going to go with Hades on this one. So I've only played two of these games, The Last of Us Part 2 and Ghost of Tsushima, and I know plenty about the other games. I think a lot of what you said about Hades in the last category stands here. And I also just think that, it'll come up in other categories, but there's so much going on well within Hades, the art direction, the performances, the gameplay design, the narrative. But I think as well, like that whole strategy of the early access release and the constant refinement, there's been a bit of a story around all of that as well, and I just wonder if it gets pipped to Game of the Year that this might be where it comes through. Like you say, Supergiant games are just so well put together and so polished, so it's a punt. I might well lose the whole bet on this one, but I'm going to go for Hades here.
No man, I genuinely think that's a strong pick. Like I really do. I think that these game awards are surprisingly close, and sadly a lot of that sort of comes down to the politics around The Last of Us Part 2.
Yeah,
like I genuinely feel that. But that is not taken away from Hades in any capacity. Like, I know that that's a fantastic game, and I know that Supergiant make absolutely fantastic games, so I think that that's a strong pick. I really do. After that, Lewis, Best Narrative.
So this is awarded for outstanding storytelling and narrative development in a game.
The nominees for this one are 13 Sentinels, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Ghost of Tsushima, Hades, and The Last of Us Part 2 again. Who are you going for this time?
Well, this time I am going to go against my instincts a little bit and say The Last of Us Part 2, because again, I think it is the strongest, the most compelling video game narrative of this year, and one of, if not the greatest of the generation. Now, the industry doesn't seem to agree with that wholeheartedly, and
industry, according to their reviews, did think that.
Yeah, that's true.
But a lot of the discourse thereafter seems to be not in favour of that. But Lewis, I'm 100% with you. It's The Last of Us Part 2, and as far as I'm concerned, it's The Last of Us Part 2 by quite a big distance there.
Yeah. Certainly of the games that I kind of know from that section. Final Fantasy VII Remake, I wondered whether you would go for that, I guess because it's an old narrative, basically.
Yeah, and it has been done really well. Like, the remake does it fantastically well, but it's not really on a level with Last of Us Part 2, to be completely honest with you. Like, The Last of Us Part 2 is superb in its narrative as far as I'm concerned, so yeah, it's The Last of Us Part 2. Easy for me, to be completely honest. Again, it's nothing against any of these other games. Like, I think these other games are great. I've never played 13 Sentinels. I don't know much about it, to be completely honest. No. But Final Fantasy VII Remake, Ghost of Tsushima, and Hades. Again, I've not played Hades, but by all accounts, absolutely superb. And the other two games, absolutely superb again. But The Last of Us Part 2, just simply a cut above. Alright, Lewis, Best Art Direction.
So this is for outstanding creative and/or technical achievement in artistic design and animation.
The nominations for this are Final Fantasy VII Remake, Ghost of Tsushima, Hades, Ori and the Will of the Wisps, and The Last of Us Part 2. My turn to choose first again here. This one, I will be choosing Hades. I will be choosing Hades for this one because I think that the art style of it, which isn't quite the same as the art direction, I understand, but the style that those games have is just absolutely superb. Again, Final Fantasy VII Remake is a strong contender here. The Last of Us Part 2 is a strong contender here. And it's nice to see Ori and the Will of the Wisps getting a nod here because I know that the art direction in the first Ori game was just superb, and I can completely see that carrying through into the second game as well. But for me, Hades this time.
Interesting, yeah. My gut kind of says Hades to a certain extent as well. And all, I mean, beautiful games in their ways. I'm actually going to go Ghost of Tsushima here because I think that it might not have such a great night in other categories. I don't necessarily think it is the best art direction. I think Hades very possibly is, but to me, I think particularly the American games media took a real shine to Ghost of Tsushima from an art perspective and a visuals perspective, which I agree with. I've never felt as strongly as I've seen a lot of particularly American games media types saying, and so I think that the votes might go that way, and also it'll keep it interesting if I don't pick Hades, so I'm going for Ghost of Tsushima.
Fair enough, man, fair enough. Next up was Best Score/Music.
For Outstanding Music inclusive of score, original song and or licensed soundtrack.
Nominations for this: Doom Eternal, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Hades, Ori and the Will of the Wisps, and The Last of Us Part 2. Again!
Yeah, if you're going to be hearing that a lot. I am going to... It is my turn to pick first this time, yeah?
It is indeed.
I am going to plump for Final Fantasy VII here.
Oh...
Partly on the same grounds as my Ghost of Tsushima prediction on the last category, that it might not have the strongest night. There was a big kerfuffle about the music in Doom Eternal around Mick Gordon, so I'm kind of ignoring that. I don't know enough about the music in Hades. The music and the score in Ori and The Last of Us Part 2 was great, but I don't think particularly revolutionary, whereas Final Fantasy VII has historically been known for its music, so I have to go in that direction, I think.
I was also going to go in this direction, but honestly, it was close between that and Doom Eternal. I also know that there was a bit of a kerfuffle around the Doom Eternal soundtrack. I actually don't know that much about said kerfuffle, but the music in Doom Eternal was absolutely face melting. So, oh man, am I going to do it? Am I going to gamble here? Because I actually do think that the Final Fantasy VII might win this. Oh, see, this is where it gets dangerous, ladies and gentlemen. Let's keep it interesting, right? Doom. I'm going Doom. I'm going Doom. I think that's incredibly bold because I really do think Final Fantasy VII is going to win that. Alright, Lewis, Best Audio Design.
So this is recognising the best in-game audio and sound design.
Nominations for this one: Doom Eternal, Half-Life Alyx, Ghost of Tsushima, Resident Evil 3 and The Last of Us Part 2. My turn to go first again here, and for me, I think that this is pretty close between Half-Life Alyx, which I know is doing quite interesting things with its sound, and The Last of Us Part 2, which again was very, very good at its sound. So, oh god, this is horrible. This is absolutely horrible. Again, this is so difficult to choose, isn't it? It's such a tight year, you know what I mean? There's a really, really tight year. I think it's got to be The Last of Us Part 2 again. I really do.
Oh, he's betting the house on The Last of Us.
Yeah, I kind of am, aren't I? I didn't really realise it would go this way, but it sort of is going this way.
Well, I mean, if it is your favourite game of the year, or the game you think is best, it's hard to ignore it every time it comes
I haven't played Half-Life Alyx. That's the thing, but I know that the sound design for that would have been so incredible, you know?
Yeah.
It's between those two for me.
Bear in mind that a lot of other people wouldn't have played Half-Life as well. That's the thing, you know, including the people voting on these awards.
This is games critics, you know. You would have liked to think that these outlets would have had someone who was voting that way. But anyway, what are your thoughts?
I'm going to go by your advice from previous years and believe in the idea that audio design in FPSs is so important. So I'm actually going to go Doom Eternal on this one.
Wow.
Which is a game I've not played. It's one of only 2 games on this list that I haven't played. But
oh man, I'm more meant in the Call of Duty vein.
Well, exactly, but I wonder whether that carries through. I mean, yeah, Ghost of Tsushima uses audio really interestingly to navigate you around. Resident Evil obviously is so atmospheric, and The Last of Us is just, you know, close to perfect in all senses. So I just think that Doom might scoop it here if they're doing interesting things there. It's a bit of a gamble because I've not properly played it, but that's what I'm going for.
Nice one, man. Alright, Best Performance, Lewis.
Awarded to an individual for voiceover acting, motion and or performance capture.
Nominations for this one are Ashley Johnson for Ellie in The Last of Us Part 2, Laura Bailey as Abby in The Last of Us Part 2, Daisuke Tsuji as Jin in Ghost of Tsushima, I hope I've not butchered his name, Logan Cunningham as Hades in Hades, and Naji Jeterum as Miles Morales in Marvel's Spider-Man.
So for this one, I am going to pick Laura Bailey as Abby in The Last of Us Part 2. I think it's a straight shoot between the two Last of Us performances, probably.
Yeah, for me too, really. Although Logan Cunningham has been so fucking good in every Supergiant game. He's been great. And the guy here, Datsuki Tsuji, who played Jin, like, excellent as well. Really good. Not played Miles Morales yet, but I mean, a really strong category again, man.
Absolutely, yeah. So who are you going to go for there?
Honestly, before you said that, I was going to pick Laura Bailey. So
yeah,
I think I might have to go Laura Bailey again. I know that's a bit uninteresting, but she was great. She was really, really fucking good.
Yeah, I think it was a standout performance in that game, and obviously controversial, but so good. So
I mean, Ashley Johnson as well, like as Ellie, was absolutely superb as well, though, like brilliant. So it'll be very interesting to see if it does go to one of them, which of the two it goes for. But I am punting for Laura Bailey. Yeah. All right, Lewis, games for impact.
This is for a thought-provoking game with a pro-social meaning or message.
Nominations for this are If Found, Kentucky Route Zero TV Edition, Spiritfarer, Tell Me Why, and Through the Darkest of Times. For me, I think this is Tell Me Why, because it was the first playable trans character in a major video game. I think that is genuinely quite an amazing impact. Although Kentucky Route Zero is probably my favourite game of those, and I mean, is actually the only one that I've played. I know people responded very positively to Spiritfarer as well, but to me, Tell Me Why.
Nice one. I am going to go kind of with heart instead of head, maybe, and pick Kentucky Route Zero, just because it is one of my favourite games of this year, and given that it was kind of the end point of that whole series, I think it would be nice to award it. Not confident about winning this one, but that's what I'm picking.
All right, Lewis, best ongoing game.
So this is awarded to a game for outstanding development of ongoing content that evolves the player experience over time.
Nominations for this one: Apex Legends, Destiny 2, Call of Duty Warzone, Fortnite, and No Man's Sky. Usual characters, Lewis.
Yeah, usual characters. I don't feel strongly about any of these games because this isn't really my field at all. Quite blind. I'm going to go for Apex Legends. That's more because it's the game that a lot of my friends still play regularly. That's the only reason I'm going in that direction, basically.
I think it's probably going to be Fortnite again here, personally. Whether or not that's deserved or not, but still gargantuan, still massive, still doing crazy things with their world, still massively well supporting the player base there. So for me, going for Fortnite. Next up, best indie game, Lewis.
For outstanding creative and technical achievement in a game made outside the traditional publisher system.
Nominees for this one are Carrion, Fall Guys, Hades, Spelunky 2, and Spiritfarer.
It's got to be Hades, doesn't it? I'm pretty confident there.
I mean, it does have to be Hades, I think, but man, what a category as well. I mean, Fall Guys absolutely took over the world. Spelunky 2 has been received incredibly well. I know that you really liked Carrion as well, and I know that a lot of people like Spiritfarer, so a really, really strong category there. But yeah, considering the amount of other nominations that Hades has got, I think it is very difficult to see it not going Hades' way. Next up after that was Best Debut Game.
For the best debut game created by a new independent studio.
Nominations here are Carrion, Mortal Shell, Raji, An Ancient Epic, Roki, and Phasmophoria. I am going for Mortal Shell here, which I've not played any of these games, it should be pointed out, but I know that Mortal Shell was a sort of a hit with the Dark Souls crowd, we will say. It was definitely a game in that vein. So for me, I'm going to try Mortal Shell, although to be honest with you, it's a bit of a punt.
Yeah. Yeah, I've played Carrion, but I don't think it's necessarily the best debut game. You know, it's solid, but I'm going to go for Phasmophobia here just because it's kind of taken off recently. This is a sort of horror immersive multiplayer thing that a lot of people have been doing online, a bit in the way that Among Us and other games like that have sprung up recently. So I don't know much about it, honestly. We had someone on our social media praising it, so I'm going to go that direction, but a bit of a punt also.
Next up after that, Lewis, best mobile game.
For the best game played on a mobile device.
Nominations for this one: Among Us, Call of Duty Mobile, Genshin Impact, Legends of Runeterra, and Pokemon Cafe Mix.
I am going to have to go for Among Us here. It feels like it deserves it. I'm sure Call of Duty might usurp it, and Genshin Impact has been massive recently, but it feels like Among Us has had such an enormous, incredible year that it deserves to take that award.
I mean, I am picking Among Us just because I want it to go to Among Us. I think that it could very well go to Genshin Impact, honestly, and Call of Duty Mobile was always a contender. I know that Legends of Runeterra was also pretty popular among the League of Legends crowd and whatever, but for me, I'm just willing it to be Among Us because it's such a great story around that game. Next up, innovations and accessibility, Lewis.
This is recognising software and or hardware that is pushing the medium forward by adding features, technology and content to help games be played and enjoyed by an even wider audience.
Nominations for this one are Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Grounded, Hyperdot, The Last of Us Part 2 and Watch Dogs Legion. For me, Last of Us Part 2 again here, I just know that the amount of accessibility options that they put in that game was, quite frankly, groundbreaking for a game of its size. So for me, The Last of Us Part 2 here, probably relatively easily.
Yeah, I'm going to agree fully with that. It's the one that I know the most about in terms of the accessible offering. But a shout out to Ubisoft for getting 2 games nominated in this category. That shows a real commitment, and I think that needs to be applauded.
Absolutely, yeah. Next up, Best Action Game, Lewis.
For the best game in the action genre focused primarily on combat.
Nominations for this one: Doom Eternal, Hades, Half-Life Alyx, Neo 2 and Streets of Rage 4.
Another tough category. I'm leaning towards Hades again, Mark. Doom Eternal is calling to me, to be honest, but I'm going to go for Hades.
Yeah, to be honest, so am I. Again, it's between those two for me. I think Half-Life Alyx really deserves its nomination there as well, although obviously I haven't played it. Lovely to see Streets of Rage 4 there, I've got to admit. But for me, probably between Doom Eternal and Hades, and honestly, before you said that, I was thinking it has to be Hades here. So yeah, Hades for me too.
Fair enough.
Next up, Best Action Adventure Game.
For the best action-adventure game combining combat with traversal and puzzle solving.
Nominations for this one: Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Ghost of Tsushima, Spider-Man Miles Morales, Ori and the Will of the Wisps, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, the only nomination for this, I believe, and a game that came out this time last year, and The Last of Us Part 2, again. I really want to say Ghost of Tsushima here, to be honest, but I'm going to say The Last of Us Part 2, again.
I mean, I think you're probably right. It probably is the best action-adventure game. I am going to go with Ghost of Tsushima, though. I did have that marked from beforehand. I think some of those games have come out too late, probably. Like, I don't think Valhalla or Miles Morales will be properly considered. So Ghost of Tsushima seems to me to be the other obvious candidate.
Yeah. It's also quite telling that those games were nominated for Games of the Year as well, and the rest of these games weren't, is usually a relatively good telltale sign, you know. Alright, Lewis, Best RPG.
For the best game designed with rich player character customization and progression, including massively multiplayer experiences.
Nominations for this one: Final Fantasy VII Remake, Genshin Impact, Persona 5 Royal, Wasteland 3 and Yakuza Like a Dragon. Very, very strong category, this.
It is indeed, yeah. I'm going to lean towards Final Fantasy VII here as well. I think there's enough clout behind it and enough support. There's some great games there, though. It could go in multiple directions, I think. What's your take?
I am going to go for Persona 5 because I think that is actually the best game there, probably. I know that it was massively lauded when the original Persona 5 first came out, but could I see a lot of people going towards Final Fantasy VII Remake here? Absolutely. Honestly, I think it's probably between those two. Yakuza Like a Dragon is also a stellar game by all accounts as well for fans of the series, but I think that Persona 5 is probably the best game there, so I'm going to punt for that. Alright, Liz, Best Fighting Game.
For the best game designed primarily around head-to-head combat.
Nominations for this one: Grand Blue Fantasy Versus, Mortal Kombat 11 Ultimate, Street Fighter V Champion Edition, One Punch Man, A Hero Nobody Knows, and Under Night in Birth, then a whole bunch of letters that I don't understand whether they're. For me, Mortal Kombat 11, got to be.
Yeah, it's one of few games on that list that I know anything about even, so I'm going to go Mortal Kombat 11 as well.
Alright, next up, Best Family Game.
For the best game appropriate for family play, irrespective of genre or platform.
Nominations for this one: Animal Crossing, Crash Bandicoot 4 It's About Time, Fall Guys, Mario Kart Live Home Circuit, Minecraft Dungeons, and Paper Mario The Origami King. Nintendo category usually, Lewis, but some wild cards in there this time.
Some wild cards and some really great games. It's a tough little category that this year. I'm going to say Animal Crossing just because of the popularity, but honestly, if Fall Guys took it, if Crash took it, I wouldn't be surprised at all.
I really think it's probably between Fall Guys and Animal Crossing. I am also going to punt for Animal Crossing. Sorry, I know that this is getting very uninteresting when we're picking the same games over and over again, but I genuinely think that is probably the best family game there has been this year. Although if it went to Fall Guys, I think it would be fully deserved, to be honest.
Absolutely, yeah.
Alright, let's best sim/strategy game.
Best game focused on real-time or turn-based simulation or strategy gameplay irrespective of platform.
Nominations for this one: Crusader Kings 3, Desperados 3, Gears Tactics, Microsoft Flight Simulator, and XCOM Chimera Squad. For me, this is actually an incredibly tight category. Crusader Kings came out to huge accolades, Microsoft Flight Simulator came out to huge accolades, and XCOM Chimera Squad is XCOM, and everybody loves XCOM. Gears Tactics as well. So many people love that game, and I know that you love Desperados, so this is a very difficult category to choose when I have personally played none of the games. But I might surprise you because I am going to go for Microsoft Flight Simulator.
Oh man, see, it's such an odd category because Flight Simulator doesn't really feel like it belongs there in a certain sense.
Yeah, I kind of agree, to be honest, yeah.
I honestly, Mark, was going to go for that too, but I want to keep it interesting. So I have played a few of these games, and I kind of intend to play all of them, actually. Strangely, these games have started to appeal to me quite a lot. XCOM is one of my favourite games of this year, but I don't think it is anywhere close to being the best game of the year. So I think I might go Crusader Kings 3.
It came out to huge accolades, man. Like, I think that is a good pick. I really do.
It totally depends on who's playing it at the outlets, and I think Flight Simulator might scoop it because of that, but yeah, I'll go Crusader Kings 3.
Alright, listen, and best sports/racing game.
This is for the best traditional and non-traditional sports and racing game.
Nominations for this one: Dirt 5, F1 2020, FIFA 2021, NBA 2K 2021, and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2.
I'm going to go for Tony Hawk's here more than any other reason because I want it to beat those other games, basically, just for doing something kind of new and fans wanted, FIFA and games of its ilk. I just find it very hard to praise in any way,
Yeah, although I do know that F1 2020 came out to huge accolades as well, and apparently that was a really, really good game. But knowing the people that are going to be voting on this, I will also be saying Tony Hawk. Alright, Lewis, best multiplayer game.
This is for outstanding online multiplayer gameplay and design, including co-op and massively multiplayer experiences, irrespective of genre or platform.
Nominations for this one: Animal Crossing, Among Us, Call of Duty Warzone, Fall Guys Ultimate Knockout, and Valorant. For me, this is actually an incredibly varied and very interesting set of games. A really interesting set of games. I'm really tempted to go for Animal Crossing again here, I don't know, Liz, I hadn't really considered this. I had to look down a lot of the other categories. I seem to have maybe missed this one, but this one's kind of thrown me through a loop. I'm not really sure what I'm going to go for. I'm going to say Fall Guys. I want it to win something. Let's say Fall Guys.
Oh, well, the one that I have in bold as my pick was also Fall Guys. I don't really think of Animal Crossing as a multiplayer game, even though evidently it is. I realise how that might sound stupid, but it doesn't feel like a multiplayer game to me.
Yeah, it's much more you're doing your own thing and you can do your own thing with other people.
Exactly, yeah.
Whereas the other games are like fundamentally reliant on having multiple people there.
Yeah, and obviously Among Us has such a strong shout, and I'm kind of leaning against it because I'd picked it for best mobile game. So yeah, as boring as it is because you've picked it as well, I'm going to stick with Fall Guys here, but that's such a tight category that there's a huge potential to lose in multiple
it's such an
directions.
Interesting category. Like, I could see it going to any of them, honestly,
totally,
and the two of us totally with. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, well, we will have to call it a day there with our predictions. It should be pointed out that we missed out best community support and best VR/AR game, basically because we just don't know enough about those sorts of games, their community support, and we just don't play AR and VR games, so I think that us trying to predict them is a bit farcical, to be completely honest.
Much the same with the esports categories.
We've skipped all the esports categories because, again, that's just not something that we are involved in and we really don't know too much about it. So again, us trying to predict that would be a little bit of a farce. So with all that said, I would like to remind everyone that you can find PlayersToo on all the social media. That's Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, the lot. You can also find our written content over at PlayersToo.com. That's PlayerSToo.com. And if you could take 5 seconds to give us 5 stars over on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, it really, really helps us out. I know I say this twice a week, every week, but it really, really does help us out. And while you're over there, if you could leave us a little review as well, again, it just helps us out even more. And if you've already done that for us, you're an absolute legend to us, and thank you so, so much. I'd like to remind everyone that our play-along game for this month is Papers, Please, which I will definitely be starting now that I've finished with Watch Dogs Legion, and I'm very, very excited to finally be getting around to it. It's been years that I've wanted to play this game, so this is genuinely an exciting one for me.
Nice one. I can't wait to hear your thoughts. I played it a few years ago now, and I'm really excited to know what you reckon about it.
Absolutely, and we'll be discussing that next week. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, we will see you then.
Thanks.